One of the strongest weapons Bungie has given us is the return of Destiny 1's Red Death. Now, I'm not gonna lie, guys. The first time we saw Red Death, I really wasn't that excited, especially considering we have Crimson already in the game. But of course, after spending time with Red Death, in both PvE and inside of PvP, the weapon pops. And what's so crazy is Red Death wasn't even in its final form, at least until now. With the release of Act 2, we finally have access to the Red Death Exotic Catalyst, which synergizes beautifully with Red Death itself. Now, taking a look at Red Death, for those that are not familiar with this weapon, it comes with the perk Redemption, which reads that final blows of this weapon cures you and increases reload speed. Reloading after final blows cures nearby allies. Now, this is no joke. It provides cure ×2 to yourself after every kill, which is an instant 120 HP, which, by the way, has no cooldown. Then after landing a kill once we reload, this will then heal allies in proximity to us, granting them cure ×1. This giving out 60 HP. Now, very similar to Heal Clip, minus the reload for the cure ×2 to yourself. Now on to the second perk. This is called Inverse Relationship. It reads that when you deal damage with this weapon, it gains increased handling, takes reduced flinch, and movement speed is increased for a short time. Now when you are at reduced health, this weapon deals additional damage. Dude, there's so much that is baked into this perk. Just simply dealing damage increases your handling, on top of reducing your flinch, which are huge inside of PvP. It's like a combination of like Enlighten Action and To the Paint. As for the damage increase though, it actually has 3 tiers. Now this is based on how much health and shield you have lost. For instance, inside of PvE, when you are less than 114 shield, your damage is increased by 10%. When you're less than 60 shield, your damage is increased by a whopping 20%. But then once your shield is broken, this will grant you a massive 40% increase to your damage. Keep in mind, guys, this is already an exotic primary weapon, which is of course doing more damage by default against red bar enemies. So you're essentially walking around with like bait and switch surrounded levels of extra damage for simply losing health. Now inside of PvP, this activates exactly the same. We have the same thresholds, but keep in mind here, guys, the damage buff is not nearly as much as that would be broken inside of PvP. Essentially less than 114 shield, you get a 2% damage increase. Less than 60 shield, you get a 4% increase. And then at no shield, when you're in your actual health bar, this is a 6% increase to our damage, which at base, we can land a kill on Guardians tier 10 to tier 7 resilience in 6 crits, 0.67 seconds. And then from tier 6 and below, we can land a kill in 5 crits, 1 body. Now, when the perk is active at ×1, this raises that forgiveness up of 5 crits, 1 body at tier 7 resilience. At ×2, you're able to get the kill on Guardians at tier 8 resilience and below in 5 crits, 1 body. And then at ×3, you can get the kill on Guardians, tier 10 resilience, and below in 5 crits, 1 body. Now, what this really means for Red Death is the ability to commit to being more aggressive. Literally, as you find yourself getting weaker, lay on the trigger. This is why Red Death gets stronger as the gunfight goes. It's one of the few weapons where you're like, hey, hit me. Now hit me again. Now with the base weapon out of the way, now let's jump into the catalyst. Now for those trying to get the exotic catalyst, it's pretty easy. You just got to get level 145 in the season pass. Now granted, if you're starting from literally level 1 today, it may take a moment, but let me just say, seasonal challenges give so much XP, like way more than bounties. So if you're looking for a way to get a chunky amount of XP very, very fast, do those seasonal challenges. Now, after you obtain the catalyst at level 145, you simply just have to get kills with Red Death to then fully unlock it. Literally 15 to 20 minutes at Shirochi or wherever your favorite ad-dense environment may be, and you'll knock this out pretty fast. Now, looking at the catalyst and what it provides, it states that final blows charge this weapon. When the weapon is charged, the next final blow creates a healing burst at your location and leaves a remnant behind that provides restoration to allies. Now this is extremely intricate. Normally catalysts are like, hey, here's a stat bump, take it or leave it. But if you look at the first part, it says that final blows charges the weapon. Now this takes only 2 kills to get Red Death fully charged. And when charged, you'll see a buff right above your super bar which says that Red Death is charged. Another thing to note is that the gun itself will glow in certain places when charged, indicating that you are in fact fully charged. But what happens is the following kill you get with Red Death with that full charge will emit this healing burst, and this will grant you restoration ×2, which will last for 4 seconds. Now inside of PvP, it only takes 1 kill to get a full charge, which means on the second kill, you'll be able to emit restoration ×2 in that healing burst. The beautiful thing here is that it grants restoration ×2 to not only yourself, but also your allies. which in game modes like Trials or even the competitive playlist, this is extremely potent. We've talked about it multiple times how good Restoration times 2 is. You're looking at 50 HP per second inside of PvE and then 25 HP per second inside of PvP. This is still on top of the cure benefits that you get from Red Death itself. So it's like cure is going to give you the big bulk of your HP back, and then restoration will carry you the rest of the way. And we'll talk about the different ways you can extend that with various fragments. Now let's take a look at the remnant. We can see here that as soon as you get a kill, that remnant will spawn and then will linger for teammates to pick up, which will then also grant them restoration times 2. This looks and functions very similarly to a healing grenade. Literally just looking at them side by side, they're pretty much identical. Due to this, we thought that this would pair with things like Speaker Sight. And what we wondered was if the healing remnant would actually spawn a turret. I'm very sad to report that does not work. It's not like you can't double up on heals here, but the remnant that's being dropped from Red Death is a healing remnant only. There's no type of conversion, as it's not a healing grenade that we're throwing. No lie though, if that was the case, Red Death Speaker Sight would literally be the strongest support combo in the game and would probably outclass no hesitation for myself. Now, while it is disappointing that it doesn't work in that way, I still think that Speaker Sight is great to pair with Red Death, especially in something like PvP. It's very annoying to deal with an enemy that has a weapon like Red Death, which can easily 2-burst you, that also has the ability to heal and cure teammates, and then they have a healing turret that they can drop down. Even with the 10-second internal cooldown that Speaker Sight has on Orb Generation, this is still a phenomenal combination. Next, I want to take a look at some of our subclass synergy though. Now that we have this catalyst, what pairs best here? If we take a look at Solar, we have Ember of Benevolence, which reads that applying Restoration, Cure, or Radiant to allies grants increased grenade, melee, and class ability regeneration for a short duration. Now this is a substantial 400% increase regeneration rates to all of our abilities, lasting for 6 seconds. And inside of PvP, this lasts for 3 seconds. Now this paired with Speaker Sight, or even base healing grenades, was already strong. But with the healing provided from Red Death, you could potentially go full offensive and really just use whatever loadout you want to use. You want to go solar grenades and then just rely on Red Death completely for that Ember of Benevolence proc, you most definitely can. If there's one thing that really pulls Red Death back, is that its AoE clear is a bit lacking in comparison to its competition. It does good damage, and it deals with high health targets pretty good, but big groups of enemies, it does begin to struggle. Now next we have Ember of Empyrean. This states that solar weapon or ability final blows extends the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. Now this allows for restoration to be refreshed up to a max of 15 seconds, but you can keep doing this indefinitely, meaning so long as you are getting kills with Red Death, you can keep restoration active. Now the timer refresh is based on the tier of enemy that's being killed. So for instance, a tier 1 minor enemy gives you 1.5 seconds. Tier 2 minors and tier 1 elites give you 2.25 seconds. Tier 3 minors and tier 2 elites and enemy guardians inside of PvP gives you 3 seconds. Tier 4 minors and tier 3 elites and higher, so think things like bosses, will refresh up to 6 seconds. This is a very good combination with Red Death, guys, especially in solo content. Now lastly, we have Ember of Solace, which reads that radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. Now this is a 50% increase to the duration of both effects, which takes our restoration timer from a base of 4 seconds to now 6 seconds. Now taking a quick look at Prismatic, we've got Facet of Hope, which states that while you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. This is about a 6% increase to class ability regeneration, and we'll have restoration active almost 24/7. So a great way to top off your class ability. The only other thing that really directly synergizes with Red Death would be Facet of Sacrifice. This states that while you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability final blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. It's very obvious here, guys, that if you're looking to lean into that healing support role, you're going to want to go Solar. And considering the artifact mods that have been recently given to us for Act 2, there's a lot of reasons to give a full Solar loadout your attention. With that being said, guys, Red Death was already a very good weapon. It's a force to be reckoned with, especially inside of PvP. Inside of PvE, it does what it's supposed to do by keeping you and your teammates alive. And the Exotic Catalyst itself is going to amp that up even more. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.